So this morning I was sitting down thinking about the book that I'm writing at the moment, Time to Fly, which is all about taking control of your life and living your dreams. And there's a chapter in there around if it doesn't feel right. And I was thinking about what story am I going to tell in this chapter, because it's based on intuition. And there's a flying story I want to share with you. Those of you who are regular viewers of this video blog would know that I love flying. It's part of who I am and I use it a lot in business. And those of you who are new to this video blog are about to learn that I'm a pilot and I love flying. And I had a really interesting flying experience recently where I really had to trust my intuition. And then I was put in another challenging situation where I really realized that I could do it. And so that's what this video blog is about. I'm going to share these couple of flying stories with you in the hope that it maybe gives you some insight into how do you know? That question comes up for me all the time and people say, how do I know, Karen? Like, how do I know to trust my intuition? Or how do I know if this is the right step to make? And that's what this is about. I want to share these couple of stories with you that that might actually help in you discovering what is right for you. So as pilots, we are always trained to think about the weather. It's something that when you learn to fly the plane first, and then you sort of worry about all those other environmental things around you. So Dave and I, my boyfriend and I, were on our way back from a trip recently, and we were flying around and we stopped in to this small little town named Charleville, which is in Western Queensland. For my Australian followers, for people overseas, it's a small little town, 3,000 people. And we stopped in there, stay overnight and visit a friend of mine, her two little twins, which was great. We were having a great time, but there was all of this weather. So we had to get from Charleville to Brisbane. And I had a certain time frame that I was thinking about doing that in, and there was all this weather. Now, I fly a small plane. So if you're not familiar with small planes, this is a 4-seater single engine. It's a Cessna 172. And you can't fly in bad weather in those planes. You can't fly in cloud. Well, you can, but you really don't like to because it's a single engine and it's small. So we had this weather and we were meant to be flying the next morning, and I woke up and we had this recent big Antarctic blast in Australia. And between where I was and where I needed to get to Goondiwindi to visit some other friends, there was quite a big weather front. And I was pretty nervous. I thought, oh God, I'm actually probably pushing the boundaries on this. I don't really know what I'm getting myself in for. So I called around and I got some advice. I called a friend of mine who's a very experienced pilot and said, can you help me read this weather forecast? And he said, look, Karen, if you had another pilot with you and maybe if you had a little bit more of experience, you'd probably give it a go. He's like, I don't know, like it could be okay. It might not be okay. I don't really know. You kind of got to get up there and you could get up there and check it out and come back. And so we kind of worked through it and I wasn't sure, and I was meeting friends at the other end, and the weather was beautiful and clear in Charleville, and I kept thinking about it, and I said to Scott on the phone, I said, so what you're telling me is that for me to get from here to Goondiwindi, there's a fair chance I'll have to fly through this weather front. It's a trough, so a low pressure system. And he said, yeah, I think so. From what we can work out, I think you will. And I went, no, I'm not doing it. I've done that before, and I don't want to put myself in that position again. It was a really intuitive decision. I felt inside myself that it was the right one to make. And I'm really fortunate. I did grow up in a family of pilots, and there's a bit of a saying with anyone who flies as a pilot, we'd rather be down here wishing we were up there than up there wishing we were down here. And so I really stuck to that. I went, if I'm up there, is there a fair chance that I'm going to want to be on the ground? And I thought, yes, there is. And so I made the decision not to go. And that can be really hard because I had my friends that were really looking forward to seeing me on the other end. And I think that's the same in life sometimes and in business, where we make these gut decisions that feel really right for us. And sometimes that means you might have to let down somebody else or not pursue a course of action that you were planning on because you really feel that it is inherently not the right decision for you. And that's true intuition, I think, when you really get to that place of knowing that that was the right decision and you stick by it. When we learn to fly as a pilot, when you make a decision, you make a sure decision. You don't sort of be wishy-washy about it, or you don't turn around and get the advice of your passengers. You know, you are in control. And Time to Fly, the book, talks more about this, of you're in control of your life. And so making that decision today, I felt really good about it, that I really followed my gut. I knew where my limitations were. I knew that was not going to be a good decision for us to fly that particular day. It was really flying into the unknown. So the next day we took off and we flew to Goondiwindi, which is a couple of hours trip, and it was great. I was a little bit nervous because I knew there was still this weather moving forward, and it was a great day. So we got to Goondiwindi. The next day we had our final leg to go from Goondiwindi to Brisbane. It was a trip that I had done many times. It's an hour and a half, how many, I don't know, 160 nautical miles or something. And, you know, I'm very used to flying that route. Woke up that day and it's windy. Super, super, super windy. So this Antarctic blast that had gone through had brought with it this ridiculous winds. And so to get from Goondiwindi to Brisbane, we had to fly over this mountain range. And in the weather forecast, if you really read it down, it said mountain wave turbulence. I think that's what it's called, and which basically means that as the wind is hitting the mountain, it starts to spiral, and you can get these really strong updrafts and really strong downdrafts. And so you've got to be really aware of that when you're flying, about these updrafts and downdrafts. And so I was a bit nervous about that. The forecast said that it was going to be better after midday. So I sort of thought we'll delay the flight a little bit. I rang around, I got lots of advice from lots of different people, and thought, I'm a bit nervous about this, about taking off, and I don't really know what it's going to be like up there. You know, generally speaking, wind's okay. At least it was a tailwind, and we ended up having a rip-roaring tailwind. But I still wasn't, you know, I wasn't 100% sure, but everything that I could read sort of was telling me that it would probably be okay. We'd probably have a pretty strong crosswind landing at the other end. And I remember sitting there that morning and making the decision that we would go, that we would take off and we would fly, knowing that you don't get your license as a pilot to only ever fly in the most perfect, pristine conditions. Because if you did that, there'd be no point. You know, when you learn to fly, we do it because it's a challenge, that it pushes you to learn a new skill. And I think so many pilots, you know, you want to keep testing yourself and improving your skills. And the only way to get experience as a pilot is to fly. You have to do it. But you obviously have to make those judgment calls of where your limitations are as a pilot, which I had made 2 days prior, that wasn't a situation I was prepared to put myself in. But this particular day, I really looked at it all and I weighed it up. And what I recognized was I was hitting my own terror barrier. Now, in thinking into results and in the work that I facilitate with Bob Proctor's program at Bob and Sandy, lesson 7, the terror barrier, you know, when you're on that learning edge, where you're pushing your comfort zone, when you're stepping into that unknown space of growth, of learning. And I recognized that was what was going on for me that particular day, that I was at my learning edge. You know, I'd never flown in those sort of conditions with such a massive tailwind. I didn't know what to expect, you know. what would happen with the plane? Like, you know, tailwind's great. When you've got a 40 knot tailwind and you're going from 105 knots to 149 knots, which is probably, you know, going from 180, 200 kilometers an hour to doing 270 kilometers an hour. You know, I'm not perfect with my maths, but it's something like that. You know, I was a little bit nervous and landing at the other end with this big crosswind. But I recognized that, you know what, the only way I'm going to get experience here is to fly. You know, except for the wind, it was a clear sunny day. You know, I knew that I was going to have to do a great crosswind takeoff, and I was going to have to do a great crosswind landing, and I hadn't done it. I mean, I'd done plenty of those, but really I knew that it would be at my maximum. I'd really have to pull on all those skills, all that training, everything my mum and dad had taught me, you know, everything my brother had taught me about flying to be able to do that. And we did it, and we had a great trip. We had such a quick trip back to Brisbane. And, you know, the landing in Brisbane was this really strong crosswind. I remember saying to my boyfriend, do not talk to me unless we're in an emergency here. And I got the plane on the ground, and it was a great experience. You know, I was so proud of myself that I made a really good decision that day to go, and that I could do it. I knew where my limitations were. I had planned alternates along the way of different places that we could go to if I didn't feel like you know, I wasn't happy with the conditions. And so I was really in control of that situation, but I was also at my learning edge. Now, my point of sharing these two stories with you is that often I see people use the intuitive factor as not an excuse, but the intuitive factor to hide the terror barrier. So let me put this more into perspective for you. When we hit the terror barrier, we're stepping into something new, something different, something unknown. We're at the edge of our learning zone. We're at the edge of our comfort zone. And we know the other side of that is going to be growth. You know, I know now, faced with those conditions again, that I can do it. You know, that I will be able to handle it. I will weigh up each flight on its own merits, but it feels good to know that I've been in one of those situations with a really strong crosswind, takeoff and landing, and high winds along the way. Fortunately, they were tailwind. And I think that often sometimes I do find when I'm talking to people, I'll get I'm not ready, it's not the right time, it doesn't feel right for me, it's not the right fit. When actually what they're hitting is their terror barrier, which they're sort of using as the intuition. It doesn't feel right, but also that could mean you're at your terror barrier. So what I want to leave you with today from this video blog is to think about that and just become aware that sometimes, you know, you might be disguising your terror barrier for your intuition, because it's a bit safer in some respects to say intuitively I don't feel this is right, or than saying, God, I'm going to have to take a big leap of faith here and trust that actually this is the right path for me. But I say that knowing full well if your gut is telling you no, you know, if you're getting that real strong feeling about a decision or a direction that you're heading, also trust that. But I also want you to know that hitting the terror barrier can feel like, because you want to retreat back to safety as well. I hope this is making sense. You want to retreat back to safety. So recognizing if the direction that you're heading in is a direction that is going to get you closer to your goals, that is going to move you forward, that is going to get you unstuck, that is going to lead you to doing something that you've always dreamed of doing, that you absolutely love. And if you notice you're getting that pullback, it's probably more your terror barrier, you know, actually, and that's a really good thing to step through and push through it, because you'll feel like I did when you got that plane on the ground and you were like, I did it, you know, I managed that, even though you've got sweat pouring off you and, you know, you're a bit shaky, but you realize that you could get on stage and you could go and do it, rather than, you know, I don't think it's right for me. So use both, like really step into both. Learn for yourself, you know, learn to listen to your intuition to guide you in directions, and also learn to seek out and test your learning edge and push that comfort zone for yourself. So I hope those two little stories get you thinking, and you spend time, you know, getting in touch with your intuition and seeking out the terror barrier, seeking out your comfort zone, the edge of your comfort zone, and pushing right through it, because it is awesome. The other side of it is A1 awesome. Have a beautiful day.